Hi.
It is the senior most community pharmacist, Dr. Tuli.
Tompo Asembeng.
Oh, no lie. Then I say if your driver can't pick you, I make you people give me lift go. Shark is inside now. I'm at say so on link copy. But
Tompo 11 p.m.
Oh, if it comes a seed in the who give me, I guess some entanglement before that side.
You know they hear social distancing, eh?
To lepe fam D, sem crowd the whole. As I be young in the must are they cool. If you no go pick me to catch him and small left.
See, this be the problem. Who tell you say corona affects youngins? If you know they care about your life, if a guy say NSL over 50 years, away get hypertension, way poppy to be diabetic. Charlie them their go mess them up.
You are go wear face shield.
And that changes anything? That thing they protect only your eyes.
Plus face mask.
Charlie, the youth will take this thing for granted. It may not kill you, but if it give you long-term damage to vital organs like your lungs, if you go get for outside cargo house, they give your OGs where them die, will you be able to fend for yourself?
Chama, so I can say because unless I start they do Yahoo, I enter Benino, na funeral cost me this the COVID said make it left one at top hole.
If people know they follow simple directions like social distancing, hand washing, wearing face mask and things, the COVID don't go anywhere. And the way they make careless there, it be like you know go left with anytime soon.
So to lazy my shadow make beans in.
If you love yourself and the people around you, they house and take your shadow go back cry.
You are here, you more like dog me. So they kill my cry. I go get my FIFA.
And keep fighting with positivity.
Hi everyone, welcome to our very second episode of Reflections GH. And today, and just as you saw in that message, the message is still the same. We are still reminding all of us, reminding ourselves that COVID-19 is still with us, and so please stay safe and take the necessary precautions to keep others safe as well. So today we are so excited to bring you another episode of the conversations we started a couple weeks ago. Today we have a different conversation, as you may have seen on our Facebook page and our other social media pages. We are talking about colorism in Ghana today. And we're talking about colorism in how it affects society. And we're so excited that we have the usual panel, which is myself and Amanda Odoy and Godfrey Asante, but we have two exciting guests that we are so excited to talk to today as well. Thank you for joining us. We have Vesta Fosu in Accra, and we have Ikwa Banning in Tallinn, Estonia. Welcome, guests, and we're so excited to have you. I want to begin the conversation right away, and of course, I want to start with questions about what is colorism, right? When we talk about colorism, what is it, and how would we recognize it when we see it? If you want to take it, Vesta and Ikea, since you're our guest, I'll start with you.
Hi everyone, and thanks so much, regular panel, for inviting us to this discussion. I'm really excited to share thoughts and my experiences on this topic. So as far as what colorism is, what I understand is people being treated differently based on the shade of their skin. So it's not necessarily like racism, where you'll have people who belong to two different races being treated differently, but this normally happens to a group of people from the same race. And then based on the shade of their skin, there's different socioeconomic, different kinds of implications with how they're treated and how they get by in society. So that's generally how I understand colorism. I don't know if Vesta has anything to add.
You nailed it right on the head. Hi everyone, my name is Vesta Fosu. I'm in Accra. So Ikea said it all. I am more concerned with the socioeconomic effects and obviously psychological effects. Things like self-hate, stuff that are stemmed out colorism. She said it's not racism, but it's an extension of it, and it's also an extension of our colonial past and how we've been made to think that the lighter you are, the more you're associated with whiteness, which obviously in some people's mind means if you are close to whiteness, that means that you are smarter, you are bright, you're most likely going to get selected for things as compared to people of the darker shade, but in the same race. So it's kind of confounding, because that means that in a different way, if you've lived in the West and you've come home, where you think you've escaped all the microaggressions that have to do with racism, then you're walking into another form of it all on your home turf. And I think that's why I'm part of this conversation, because it annoys me. But literally, that's it. It's the other parts of the question. How do we identify it in everyday life? It's dependent on how people kind of want to. I don't know if I can find another word than whitewash what could be better. So instead of you being on a bruni obibini and Huafeno, people would say oh you obibini bruni, because um for you to be worthy of that kind of adjective or niceness, there has to be a brunilization of your bibini. So
So we have
I
to
was here.
lean on whiteness to
You
be
have
able to
to.
acknowledge the
So
beauty that
that
you have.
exactly, there's an associated, because the only way you get compliments where you're bibini that's nice is if it's like obibini bruni, and that really annoys me. And that is part of the reason why I'm here. So as I said, Kia said it all, but that's the part that grinds my gears. Okay, so yeah, let's carry on.
Amanda, you were nodding. What was on your mind?
I think the part where Vesta was talking about the Obibini Brainy, but so it's just like in as much as we think that okay, being black is nice, but
Mhm.
then when you're pretty, you're not black anymore.
Mm-mm.
You're white. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter your color, even if you're not light skinned and you're very pretty, then you're
Mhm.
more likely to be referred to as Obrini. But then talking about how we identify every day. So this is one of them.
Mhm.
How people refer to you when they're talking to you,
Mhm.
and also how people treat you.
Yes.
Um, when people meet you, how they relate towards you, especially if you're in a company of a lighter person.
Oh yes.
If
Oh
you come
yes.
across guys, if you come across people, I have had the instance where I've seen people enter a place and they actually think that the person that is light skinned is much more educated and enlightened than the person that came that was in the dark skin tone. And
Yeah.
also how we relate towards people. Actually, we have this implicit bias. Even though we are talking about this now, we also have our own biases when it
Of
comes to
course.
the issues of
Of course.
colorism. So how we also relate to people. For
Mhm.
it shows whether we are actually tilting towards those issues of colorism or not. How do we find people that are dark skinned? Are we
Yeah.
afraid of them? Are
Mhm.
we open to them? How do we feel about our friends that are dark skinned? How do we feel about our family members that are? So we have this thing, and then also, okay, I prefer to be more chocolate than being black. So these kind of things are ways in which we tend to, because people would rather associate
Ah,
considered chocolates like closer to being fair than to be considered black. So these are some of the ways we
mm,
identify colorism in our everyday life.
yeah. Wow.
Gottfried, you are also nodding. I think it looks like you are itching to say something.
Oh my goodness. Okay. For me, colorism is anti-blackness. In the way that it has definitely, it's a remnant of colonialism. So the way I think about colorism is the way that, right now, for instance, it's not so much that people are or want to associate or want you to be lighter per se, so that, or they want to be white per se, but I think it's also more along the lines of just not wanting to be darker skin. I think that's what for me the problem is, that somehow darker skin is always is seen as a problem. So for me, colorism largely relies or dwells on anti-black. It is a form of self-hate. It is a form of self-denigration. So once we sort of take it or come to it from that perspective, we also see another side of it. And I did really like what Equia said earlier about how, in other countries you might see, and I think Vesta also talked about it, that we might see problems between two races, and then you come home and and you're being measured by another system in which, how it's more along the lines for me, along how less dark you are. I think people do recognize that, you know if they want to be too light, that's a problem. So now the discourse seems to be along the lines of, don't be too dark, and for me that's a problem as well.
Mm.
So, and I have a follow up. So, is there a light skin equivalent? Is there a too light, and is it the same? Does it have the same implication as too dark? I mean, this is just random. I just thought about it as as Godfrey was speaking. If you can, and I've heard that, right? You can societally you can be too dark, right? And people would talk about. So this thing has stuck with me for about 15 years, right? I remember this. Me and my cousin, um, we were talking about this little girl, right? She was at the time she was about 4. Her mom is very light skinned, so but her dad is dark skinned, like really dark skinned. But the child is also really light skinned. And I forgot what we were talking about, but basically we're talking about something. The girl was there, and my cousin turns around and tells me, "Can you imagine how ugly this child would be if she was dark skinned?" This thing has stuck with me for more than 15 years now, right? And it stuck with me because in that moment, I was like, I mean, I didn't really feel because it was very normal to hear comments like that. But I just thought about it for a long time because now I do know, right, that it was such a terrible thing to say about, particularly in relation to something we have no control over, right? And so that's what I'm thinking about when I think about the other, like we have decided as a society that you can't be too dark to be beautiful. But is there a too light to be beautiful? Is that, or if there is, does it have the same implications?
Well, it sounds like the example you just gave kind of reinforces what the status quo is in regard to what colorism is. So, the guy is acknowledging that the kid is beautiful, but if they were dark, they wouldn't be. So, I
Yeah.
mean, right now, what's happening in society is that whiter is better. And this example kind of just highlights that. And from a young age, people are encouraged to believe that the fairer, the whiter people are, the more desirable they are, the
They
more
are, yeah,
attractive they are, the more
yeah,
intellectual they are. They're
yeah,
just better at everything than someone who
yeah.
has um, darker skin. And that comment is quite unfortunate, and it just reinforces the point. And
Like,
I guess
hmm,
we need to acknowledge that all shades are beautiful.
yeah.
It's not that blacker is nicer than fairer or fairer is nicer than blacker. We need to encourage the thought, the consciousness that
Yeah,
no matter the shade, we're beautiful, and we should embrace the diversity that we have as far as
yeah.
what the different shades we come in is concerned. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. And um, I don't know. The question kind of sounds like reverse racism in a way. Like it's not possible.
See,
It's
this is
definitely not
why this
possible.
conversation is difficult for me, Charlie, because if you try to talk about it, it would look like reverse racism. My housekeeper, I think a couple of weeks ago, there's a neighbor we have who is very light skinned. He's okay. He's okay. I'm not saying he's not handsome, he's okay. By the way the girl came in gushing about how gorgeous he looks. And I said, if he was dark, would you say the same thing? So we had to have a sit down. Like if he was, because he's very light and bright, fine boy. I'm like, if he was dark, would you be gushing so much about him? And she hadn't thought about it in that dynamic because obviously the lightness obviously makes it very, very quick, like, ooh, yes, bright, let's go. And then but is he really? I'm not hating, but is he really that handsome though? Like you're out here like writing poems. Is he really that cute? And that thing is like it's something that we have to make people aware of, so that they have a pause and have a conversation, like have a thoughts about it, because then see what Eric said. That's very, very, very sad. That is very sad. And if the child is aware of that conversation, that could literally harm how she thinks about herself, because this person said, wow.
Mm.
So in every aspect, she would always try to make sure that she has a light skin. Like, and this is why another thing is like lightening creams and stuff, which I think we're going to talk about, where you were having a conversation about, is there a possibility of you being too dark? Yes, people have that particular thing where you go out and then you're trying to buy body cream for yourself and say, oh, and what's that was she, and was so strong now, to do, and that those are conversations people have with us, and that is harming, because then you're telling me that if I get darker in this Ghanaian sun, that means that it could get wrong for me. So I should keep in a particular shade, or possibly go lighter to be more desirable, or to get the things that I want, because obviously obakoko and that kind of thing. So you see
Because,
people, it gets into the bleaching of your skin and the kind of thing, because these are small remarks that you hear about yourself when you're doing things or when you're out and about. No, but sure, anyway, to when you're stressed, look at crack. Now, color nembra. And if you're not conscious, you keep these things in your head, and then you start like your self esteem starts going like that way. So
There's
yeah,
definitely
okay,
lots
so
of work to do.
sure.
It's people um, have understood that whiter is better, but there's not been a deep dive into why this thought is popular, where the remnants have come from. That it's colonial legacy, which has kind of trickled into what we are right now, and apart from people us having to think about this a bit more, there's other little things which make it easy for kids to be socialized into thinking that as well. Like I saw a post somewhere where there were two dolls at a shopping mall in Kumasi, and there was no difference between the dolls. One was a black doll, one was a white doll, and the black doll was like a quarter less in price. And the impression is that you know, the black doll is less valuable. You know what I mean? And these kind of thoughts we carry into our adulthood, and then they seep into the relationships we have with other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so Aku in our comments had a similar thought about dolls, right? That we are made to believe white dolls are the prettiest, and a lot of times you find them in homes. That is part of that conversation. And thank you so much for all the comments that we're getting. Thank you for engaging us in that way. We appreciate those comments. When Vessa was speaking, she said
but I
something.
wanted to just probably come cover before
Oh,
how
go
do we
ahead.
learn these issues of colorism. I think I am beyond the issue of those. We learn it even in our educational system, from the classroom and everything. For me, my first encounter with paying much attention to color was when I took a course on deviance and social behavior, where previously the criminal justice system defined criminals according to color. So black people are more likely to be criminals than white. So, and then the darker you are, the more likely you are to be a hardened criminal. I left the classroom. That was even a uni level, is it level 300? I left the class and I was walking around. I was always looking out for the dark people. When I see a very dark person, I get scared because I feel like this person. So if you are dark and then you have bigger nose, you have like extra features. So this is how we learn all these things. Like
Wow.
so and then in my social psychology class, I also found out that like even when you take kids to school, the teachers are more likely to be drawn towards the light skinned kids. They find them to be much more prettier. They play with them much more than they will play with the kids that are dark. And so this child will come from preschool feeling or knowing that being lighter is nicer and is better. So from preschool to regular school, I remember when we were in senior high school, almost all of us had dreams of marrying white people, so we'll have mixed race kids because our kids are going to be prettier and all this thing. Forgetting that we're actually black, we're all black people. Went ahead to do that. But then this was something that was all over because we thought that having mixed race people would be much more prettier. Our kids are going to be liked better and all that. So these are conversations we have in our everyday life. And it has come so ingrained in our system that it helps. So if somebody commits a crime and then the person shows up, it's like, you're too nice to be a criminal. So like you're fair, you're just too much of a nice person to be. But if it's a
Hey, Jesus.
because you're black, then straight away. So
Man.
these are ways that I don't know how we're going to be able to do away with these things. There have been a lot of campaigns about how to appreciate being black, but still, we have people that will rather in our advertisement. How many times do you see people in ads being very dark skinned? They are more likely to be chocolate, more tilting towards being light skinned. So there's nothing like being too light skinned. Actually, being too light is better. You know, we have this saying that say, "Obako ko dampemi edum kania uhuno."
You know.
Like, so people would rather go for such people. Like, I appreciate it. If you are dark, how am I going to find you in darkness and all this kind of thing? So these are ways like I don't know, but then we learn all these things along these lines, and it's going to be very difficult to do away with it.
Mm,
There's
So
definitely lots of work to do.
it's safe to say, because my next question was going to be, is there a thing in Ghana? But it's safe to say at this point that it is definitely a thing, right?
ooh, it's a
And
thing.
we've gotten a little bit of the historical background, right? Based on what you've said, we've talked about how it comes from this legacy of colonization and colonialism. It also comes from what we are teaching, right? Particularly what Amanda said about the criminal justice system and what actually are taught to to in our schools about who is likely to be a criminal. This is not. I'm just thinking about my own, because I study a little of what I study is also about race, right? And particularly from the U.S. context, this is not very different from how typically, for instance, African Americans in the U.S. have been positioned, right, in terms of who is more likely to commit a crime. So there's these connections, right, between how we conceptualize the skin tone, right, color, the color of your skin, the tone of it, right, in this sense, versus racism in terms of whether you're deemed white or black or but how, and I know Amanda started talking about this, how we experience this in everyday lives, in our everyday lives. How else do we feel the effect of colorism in our everyday lives, going about our lives, conversations and stuff like that?
I feel like the media is definitely a big influencer when it comes to reinforcing colorism in society. You check out billboards. It's even though we have a population that's predominantly moving towards the darker side, you find that all the models, the actors, the brand ambassadors that are used are chocolate to fair, which is not necessarily representative of what the majority looks like. And I have a cousin who does modeling. It's kind of like a part-time gig, and you can tell from my face, most of us are like dark, like me or darker. And when she goes for gigs, sometimes she'll be originally slated to be the lead in a campaign. And then when she gets there, the brand's marketing manager will say, "Yeah, you're cute, but I think someone fairer will be better to push our brand." And it happens to her all the time. She's kind of just accepted it. It's like, it is what it is. And some of the beauty products as well. I remember when I was working in Usu, there was this Nivea signboard which was like for visibly fairer skin, something like
Mm,
this. And
mm,
how is this a positive thing? Why is
mm,
this a positive? And you see some fair lady on the thing, it's like, bro, what about moisturizing the beautiful skin we have already? Why does it have to be about changing the texture or the look, stripping the skin of melanin for it to be better? So the
mm,
media definitely a big, big factor. Um, Music videos, love interests are light skinned. Lots of high profile musicians go for that option as opposed to
yep.
going for a love interest who looks like how everyday people look like.
Mhm.
And you have high profile celebrities as well altering their skin visibly for the fans to see because they
Yep.
believe that this is better than whatever it is they had before. And this not only influences their fans to kind of follow in their stead, but it's really sad to see that they don't value, they don't val, they don't appreciate the beauty that their natural skin color comes with, and they feel like in order to kind of advance their careers, move up, or look more attractive or desirable or whatever, they need to resort to some tactics to be able to get there. So I think media definitely a really, really, really big way that's influencing people when it comes to colorism in Ghana.
Yeah, the media definitely does. Look at some of the most hyped models, anchors, and stuff like that. You'd realize that mostly they'll go for the fair, light skinned person, really light chocolates, going towards the fairness kind of range. And there was this very horrible story that I saw. Not a story, it was a post in a group in Ghana here. This group was called Tell It Mums. And there was this mom who knew she was dark, she knew her spouse was dark, and she was asking the group if there was some medication she could take to ensure that her baby is light when the baby comes out and stays light. And this is a group that people take, there's influence there. And these people were suggesting what she could ingest to ensure that when her baby came out, the baby will be light, which in her view, and obviously due to societal, showing that, oh, if she's light, she'll have a better chance in life in succeeding and stuff like that. And it really bothers me about how the socioeconomic effects of these things, and it's a long term, it could be generational, it could affect the legacy of a person. Just because you're darker, you're automatically like checked out of having a fair chance at some things. And that's really, really horrific. But the media, look, billboards, she said, ads, she said, is either somebody light, somebody with loose curls. It even goes down to how our hair looks, so much so that if you're darker and your hair is a looser curl, somebody would insist that you should have white ancestry in your, like, how dare you of this shade of color boast with this kind of hair on top of your head? That you should ask your family, it couldn't have grown out of your black hair. There has to be whiteness somewhere. And it's really annoying because why is my darkness not deserving of having this gorgeous mane of hair? It's hair, I can shave it off. So why are you so adamant that such an attribute cannot be mine? It has to have had a drop of whiteness to make sure that I deserve that. And that is something that is really, really annoying. So Ghana, Charlie, from the children all the way up, even look at how people treat kids, as she said, in schools and stuff. If you're in a neighborhood and there's a lighter kid, trust me, they are going to get the most attention. Bronini we're here, kola Bronini we're here, this is that. Everybody else is get, so if you need attention, if you need support, if something bad happens to you, it's your fault most likely because, oh yeah, Kalaboni, because the Kalaboni is something that's attributed to the blackness. But oh you're Boni, oh, like there's like a frailty that comes with that particular look. So then we have to protect you, we have to be there for you, and that means that everybody else is like pushed aside. I'm so lucky my grandma like psyched me up about my skin. So there was a point like, damn, like my grandma was my hype woman, and we're all dark. And there was a point where my cousin married a light skinned woman and brought to the house, and everything was like, or about like what? What's the fuss? What's the fuss? She's a human being, but it's like there's a goddess who's like coming down the stairs, and we all like, is just because she's light skinned, and apparently we haven't seen light skin in our family, so hey, y'all need to bow down. And I'm like, what? Like grandma says I'm cute. Like what are you talking about? So it's in our everyday lives. And as I said, if you're conscious of it, you'd realize it's happening. And if you're not, it would affect how you see yourself, how you position yourself. If you enter a room and there's a light skinned person, you may automatically check out, and that is taking that opportunity away from you because you know that because of how you've been treated, most likely that person's going to get the gig or that person has a better chance. So you have taken yourself out of the race, and that is horrible, you know.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And so I wanna take a minute and go into the comments. We have some really interesting comments, and then I think we have a couple questions as well. That so the question that one of the questions that so Aku in our comments says, can it also be due to ignorance? So this conversation about colorism, how much of it do we attribute to ignorance? At what level? I mean, I will add to that. What level of ignorance? Personal, individual ignorance, or is it ignorance that is more micro level? To what extent do we attribute this to ignorance? That's one question. I also want to make sure that, so Daniel Ayite is asking if we are allowed to ask questions. Yes, Daniel, please ask questions, and you can type your questions in the comments, and we'll definitely make sure that our panelists are able to respond to that as well. But let's come back to that question from the comments. What is this due to ignorance? And if it is, what level or dimension of ignorance are we talking here? Godfrey, if you would.
Let me unmute myself. You know, I have a love-hate relationship with ignorance, with the word ignorance, because sometimes we it can eschew a more in-depth analysis of what we need to talk about. Because this person is just ignorant. They're not racist. They're just ignorant, and they would just, refuse to unpack what exactly is happening. So, you know, I think somebody mentioned in the Facebook comments that they are rewards. So, light skin, if there wasn't any privileges or benefits, this discourse will just go away. But there are benefits. I mean, if you're lighter skinned, you would actually feel the benefits of it. And for instance, when I go to Ghana, and I'm typically oblivious of my accent now, but even at the airport and even at gas stations, when people hear your accent, you get a different kind of reaction. They treat you very differently. I remember one time I was at the airport and I needed to do something, and I was asking this person. They didn't really mind me. And I went to ask another person. They literally held my hand and took me to the manager's office. So I think, so at the end of the day, maybe not a question of ignorance per se, but the fact that we have structured our society in a way that those who have lighter skin, do get privileges. And every time when you get privilege, every time you become accustomed to it. So once you become accustomed to it, you are the issue with privilege is you are expecting it. You're expecting that because you're lighter skin, you should get this. And I remember, oh my goodness, in my elementary school, there were these light skin. There was one light skin guy who, oh my goodness, was just, he got away with almost everything. And the sad part of it all was that even when other students were being whipped, the teachers refused to whip him because they were scared that the marks would show, and and because his mom is from Lebanon. So I mean, it was so he wasn't even getting whipped like us, which was even more damaging. That we could be whipped, but they wouldn't be whipped. They can escape punishment, or they can escape punishment. So it's interesting to see the material benefits that come with it. So I would not go with the ignorance the track, but I would say that as a society, continuously we have come to understand that light skin, having a particular kind of shade of blackness, will give you access to privileges, which is of course again very, very damaging. But also it makes money. If it doesn't make money, it might have gone away pretty soon. The colonial masters knew for sure that structuring the world this way means that we will all gravitate towards their products. We will gravitate towards their countries. I mean, so there is a material benefit, as well as a symbolic benefit, which I think if we want to unpack it and really sort of restructure those elements, we can. But right now it makes money, so the advertisers don't want to even show, So
Thank you. What you said about people of lighter skin getting away with murder or whatever. So picture having staff who are shocked that you're punishing them, or who are shocked that you're questioning what you're doing, because you're so used to people just glossing it over, that you, the dark skinned boss who is not part of this system of, oh, but I'm light, so I don't understand why you're complaining. Like that is what I see, because I haven't even said anything horrible. I'm asking you why you did that. And she's like, why do you hate me? What do you mean? Why do I hate you? I'm just telling you what you've done. And I talk to the other darker skinned people the same way I talk to everybody. And I'm like, could it be because she's light? Like she's shocked that I actually ask her, why did you do it? Why are you late? Why are you on your phone? Are you on a call whilst you're working? And it's like, now you are my number one enemy. In your own sim cry. Like, I it's just you think you should get away with it. So you're mad. And I have several, of course, you have several licensing people, and they're shocked that you see that they are doing bad things, you're talking about it. Like, what did you expect if you've done something bad?
You're
And it's
holding them
hilarious.
accountable,
Yeah.
and it's a foreign
Yes,
concept.
it's a foreign concept.
Like what
Wait, she
consequences?
you're
What
so
are those?
one time she said, "You're so wicked." I'm like, "Do you know what wicked means? Please." And she was shocked. She thought I was just glossing over, like, please explain to me what wicked means, because words means things, and if you say that to my face, you could say way more horrible things. So please, right now, in front of me and the assistant manager, tell me what wicked thing I've done. Oh, I'm joking. No, you're not joking. You process that word in your head and you associated it with me. So come forth. And she was upset. That is the hilarious. She is upset that I'm questioning that she's called me wicked. So now, if I was in a space to call her, then I would. I'm like, no, you have to come through. Tell me what you meant by that. And then I think she went home. She thought about it and sent an apology. But then I'm like, so if you're doing that to me, then who else? That's not a joke. You associated this kind of character with me. So that means that my blackness means that me questioning what you're doing is wicked. Me questioning what you're doing means I am a horrible person. I don't like you. Why don't you like me? Why? I didn't know their own pemasem.
Yeah, because then she's used to being liked by
Yeah.
everyone because she's light skinned and all that. But I think the question about ignorance, I'm actually I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it. Is it what in which ways are we talking about ignorance? Just like Godfrey was questioning, is it about the effect that we are not aware of the effect this has, the consequences it has, or is it about the benefits that we are ignorant about? Like these are things that I don't know what this person meant, whether the colorism is being ignorant, because we are not ignorant at all. We've actually learned and we know what it means. We understand what it means. We know what it comes with, the benefits and privileges that Godfrey mentioned. We know that if you're light skinned, you get resources available to you. When I was very young, I knew people. I think it was in the class that we learned that there are people that went to vote actually, and when they were going to vote, they were going to look for Rollins because he's handsome, he's fair. So he's the fairest amongst all of them, and that makes him the best option, right? We know very well that when you go to hotels, front desk persons are mostly light skinned. If you're not light skinned, your makeup must be light. So that people, so we all know that it comes with privileges. So there's no way we are not aware of the consequences, but we are very much aware of the benefits, and so we would rather go after the benefits than the consequences of looking down on other people. So I don't think there's anything about being ignorant that colorism has consequences, especially negative consequences. But then we would rather go with the positives that come with it, like Godfrey mentioned. So I was also thinking about, okay, so the economic effect. Don't we know that? And then it also helps you. It links to this issue about ignorance. Don't we know that when expatriates come to Ghana, they treat us bad because we are black skin and they come lighter, and that we can be doing the same kind of work with a light skinned person, so probably a white person, and then because they are of the same kind, the person will pay the other better than they will pay us as black, even when we're in our own country. So I would rather, and I know that because my friend is fair, my friend is getting privileges in the office. So why don't I also become fair? What stops me from taking that kind of color as well so that I benefit from it? So in which am I going to be ignorant about colorism? I know that there are shades. I know that some shades are more preferred than others. So then I know everything, right? It's not like you don't know. So I think whoever asks the question maybe what should let us understand what they mean by being ignorant. Is it about the fact that we don't know that how we treat people who are darker shades is bad? No, if that's it, then we are not ignorant. We are very much aware that is wrong, but we know that, well, there are other opportunities that the person can get if they decided to lighten their skin, like those kind of things. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And so, just before we continue, there's two questions in the comments that are very similar to a question that I would definitely want us to round up this conversation with, which is basically this is not going to be a talk shop where we will where we just talk about the problems and walk away, right? So Aku, for instance, says, how do we move away from taught racism to taught acceptance of all colors, right? So what solutions do we proffer? How do we change the narrative? And we have another from Daniel Ayite, who says, how do we individually change this notion? It's interesting you talk about the problem, but how can we change this notion from individual to structural level? I want us to talk about this, not right now, because I want us to end with it. So, but there's a question before we even get to the solutions part of this, is I have noticed from the beginning of this conversation, which was about 40 minutes ago, that all of the references and all of the examples involve, I think 95% involve women. Is this a gendered conversation? Is colorism a gendered phenomenon? Is this something that we apply differently or is applied differently to women versus men? And what does that look like?
I don't think so. Turn on your TV and look at the pastors that are most popular and tell me the kind of hair they have permed to get and the kind of skin tone that they have. Look at the most popular pastors and check out their skin tone and then get back to me. It's not just women. Obviously, women, we talk a lot about things, we express ourselves a lot about things. So it will be the most heard thing about because we have a lot of things that go into our beauty and stuff like that presentation. But it happens in men as well, right? So all I say is look at the most parts that are most popular and look at how they have tried to adapt white features so that they're most lovable. Like you can see they're bleaching their skin. It's not the hair texture. That's not what you had. So why is it that you're constantly trying to get this kind of looser curl? You can see that you're all gelled and everything. What's going on there? It's the proximity to being lighter and all that. So it's not just a women thing. Obviously, women, we talk a lot, so you'd hear a lot about what we have to say, but look at the men on TV. Let me know, especially the pastors.
I think in as much as I side with Vesta that it cuts across all genders, there's also a very much gendered position when it comes to colorism, especially in selection of spouses. A lot more women will not mind the kind of men they marry if they're dark skinned, but some men would rather go for women that are light skinned. So and and this is I think something that also comes up. That's how come people are more likely if they have daughters to lighten their skin than to concentrate on their sons. So as I say, Bema they wear and yes, but woman they have to bath so that your skin remains fresh, clean, and
Wow.
all. So they are gendered sides to these issues of colorism. So you go to this front desk issue that we're talking about. If you go to hotels, you're more likely to find that a lot of these front desk guys are dark, but the girls must be fair because they are the ones that call the shots that call the market when the guys standing. If I come in and I see light skinned girls there, I'm more likely to be nicer towards them. If it's a guy, what's the big deal? So these are some of the gendered aspects of it. And this very saying that Obako ko dampemi edum kania uhuno, it also means that there's a gender perspective. Have you ever heard any woman saying that Obako ko dampemi edum kania?
We don't care.
We
They
don't
say
really
that
care.
we're wonderfully made and
Conditioned
they're
to feel
fearfully
that
made.
women must be a certain way, and then as part of our beauty must be this light skin nature, so that we'll be more attractive to men, so that we'll have more suitors and better suitors. Actually, if a fair woman is going to marry, her value is higher than a dark skinned girl. Because the kind of guys that are going to come after this facing are going to be wealthy guys who want trophy wives that they want to flaunt. Because if I'm taking my girl out, she has to be somebody that attracts a lot of these guys and all that. So these are some of the gendered undertones of the issues of color.
Amanda kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's like
Wow.
we're raised. It's like we're supposed to aspire to be married off, and then we're considered responsible adults in society. And fairness is more attractive, more desirable, and so women a lot of the time find themselves in a position where they feel like they have to lighten their skin a little bit so that they can expand their options and then won't end up an old maid or a woman's fellowship member or something like that and not be considered a responsible um, adult or face some stigmas because they haven't been able to find a suitable life partner. So yes, it is. I do believe that women definitely face um, challenges due to colorism more than the men do. And it's not just about being a desirable partner, though it's a very big thing. It's also with jobs. Like my cousin is not getting jobs because the fair girl is a better option for big brands. And big brands don't care about how this affects the mentality of the markets they're in. They're just thinking about what they think is
Make
most
money.
marketable. So consciousness will not be their priority. They'll continue to do what makes sense to their bottom line. Um, and then service in the service sector as well, you find that a lot of the people who are customer facing are light skinned. I don't want to, it's really far fetched to believe that everyone who applies for the job is fair. They're probably, there's a bit of a weird selection process going on there, which is making it's possible for people who are lighter skinned to get those opportunities that darker skinned people are not getting. When it comes to males, I'm not too sure that um, first of all, society is not structured in a way where desirability in that sense is your priority. I think it's more about the money and other things.
And one must be ugly and smell of alcohol. So if you're
Exactly. Exactly. They are fearfully made and we are wonderfully made. So the wonderfully made need to think about how to look the most wonderful as possible. Um, and I don't believe that there's lots of occupational settings where you'll find yourself being passed over for someone who is lighter skinned, as opposed to in the case with women. So I do think women are having a bit more difficulty when it comes to colorism in Ghana than men are. That's how, at least that's what my observation has been. But
Okay.
feel
I think
free
that I
to
think one
counter
aspect
this
that
if
men may
you.
suffer for in terms of colorism, one aspect that men may suffer for is that everybody, like men are more, light skinned men are more attacked, more likely to be womanizers, because you are fair, because a lot of women will come to, so they consider
Free,
light skinned men as
free,
womanizers. So that's where they
plenty,
suffer for.
plenty,
Because
plenty,
you're fair, oh, pepe, ma, and like those kind of things, issues.
plenty. That's true. That's very
So
true.
what I hear you all saying is
Mm-hmm,
that for men,
mm-hmm.
being light skinned is a bonus, right? It's not really a
Yeah,
requirement to get anything done.
yeah,
If you have it, good for you. You get a little extra bonus. But for
yeah,
women, it's almost a requirement, particularly
yeah.
in the service industry and other industries, right? Um, I have two questions here. One from Nana Boachi Fosu and one that I was thinking about. So the question we have from Nana Boachi Fosu, that which I think is important that we kind of want to talk about is he says, please, do you think we Africans are complicit in propagation of colorism on the continent? Maybe briefly, if we want to touch on that, I think it's an important question. I know we've kind of suggested this in past comments in some of the stuff we've already talked about. But if we can briefly address this, are we complicit? And in what way? Complicit, sorry. And in what ways do we see this complicity?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I think that's how come we are even having this conversation that this doesn't just happen because we are dealing with other races, but this is something that's happening amongst ourselves. How we even choose friends, how we choose workmates, how we choose roommates, how we choose the people we want to marry, and all that. So yes, we play a major role in how we are propagating colorism and the extent to which it has come. Probably if um, in historical times this has been stopped, we probably won't be here. But because we allowed it to go on, to linger on, and that's why we are here. Um, you might be surprised that when you go to those advertisement companies, the person that is even hiring these light skinned people might be a dark person. but thinking that for organizational structure and benefits, I must go for a light-skinned person. So indirectly, whilst you're dark-skinned and you can just come out, use as an opportunity to say that, okay, no, these people also have a space in this industry. You would rather go along with the existing narratives that light-skinned people are. So yes, we are every time, every day, encouraging this and sustaining the issues of colorism.
And
It's
I also think. Oops, did somebody want to say something?
no,
Oh,
go for it. Go ahead, please.
no, I have a very short thing to add to that because I think, typically what I hear is the market, right? This is what the market wants, and that is really used to rationalize these kinds of decisions because then there isn't much of an ethical question or sort of a way to process what is happening. It's just, well, we did a survey and people selected light skinned people. There isn't any questioning of why they did so. And so, based on that data, we will just use that data to select this light skinned person. So, we are complicit, but I think the other sort of question behind that is yes, of course, history of colonial history has informed how we understand these issues. And at the same time, you have sort of mechanisms or systems in place that is using that colonial information as evidence that we actually want light-skinned people. So in the end, I think part of that is that ethical question is that maybe marketers and advertisers would have to ask themselves, but they're not. And as Amanda said, even this person might be a darker skinned person, but they've not been socialized to even question that. It's just, well, people. I did this survey and everybody chose the light skinned person, so I'm just going to go with them.
My question, so the second question is related to this one and related to what Godfrey was just talking about. Throughout this entire conversation, one of the things that has kept coming up, even the word desire, to be desirable, and we talk about choice, right? So if I am the light-skinned person and I get the job because of whatever, the person who chose me for that job, it was their choice, right? To choose to give me that job. If I desire a light-skinned person as a boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or whatever, that's my choice. Why should we be sitting here having this conversation about people's choices, right? Is desire a thing that is only analyzed at that individual, this is my choice, so leave me alone, or is there something more structural to it?
The
Do we want to go to Freud status?
there should be yes, your personal desires should be your personal desires. But if your personal desires is going to affect the socioeconomic status of somebody, and not based on some structured like meritocracy based on skills, experience, and stuff, then it's a problem. And we've heard stories. I try as much as possible because a lot of these things come from the West, like racism. But we've heard stories of how people have been underpriced for how much their property costs because of their blackness. And maybe in Ghana, we haven't been able to measure that on a scale where we can go, oh, that's the data, but we can see it in everyday life. Okay, so it's something that we have to call out and something that we have to make people aware. Is your desirability or your personal ego preferences affecting somebody's life? Or you're going to use some standards to actually measure us all in equal strength and pick the one that's best? If the light skinned person is better, then fine. But on what particular basis are you picking them over a darker skinned person for this particular thing? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves and have people ask themselves whenever they're going through life, basically.
I think the reason why it's necessary and important for us to have this conversation is because it transcends the individual life to the societal structures that involves our everyday activities. So if I personally choose to date a light-skinned person, well, that's my choice, right? But then if I come to the office and I would choose light-skinned person over merit, like as Vesta mentioned, then there's a problem because and then if I'm going to look down on other people because of my personal choice of wanting light-skinned people, then it has consequences. So we can say that there's an individual aspect of this, and then there is the institutional and societal aspect of it, and that broader part of it is what affects every other person, and there's a need to address it. In our individual spaces, what we do directly affects us, and we can address it. But then when we move it outside, so if I bring my child to school and you're going to look down on that child because he or she is that skinned, and my child is going to come home with mental health issues, that's going to be a problem for me. If you're going to raise a generation that is going to grow up thinking that if I'm dark skinned, then I'm not important, I don't fit into society, and I can't give up my best, then we are killing skills, we're killing dreams and all that. And that's how come these things are very necessary for us to discuss. We have to look at the broader picture, the bigger picture, as to how and why these things are happening and how we need to deal with them, and how it's actually killing dreams, is killing how do you call it, labor forces and abilities to perform and all that. And this has consequences for our economy and all that. It just doesn't end at the individual level like that.
Yeah, it's killing people as well. It's not just killing like things like dreams, and it's killing people. You go to a hospital and the white person is getting more attention because they're white. So if I'm screaming in pain, my blackness is supposed to say that I'm very tough, I'm strong, I can take it. No, I can't take it. I have a headache, I'm in pain. Oh, like no, it's happened, and it almost happened to Serena Williams because she was complaining about something, and the whole Serena Williams almost died from a clot because people weren't paying because she's darker. And we're not going to listen because blackness means you're tough, you're strong, you can take pain. No, we are all human beings. The amount of pain you're inflicting on me is the same amount of pain you wouldn't want to inflict on somebody else. So it's literally killing people because if you're lighter, you'll get the quick service. It's a fact. Obruniba, people are running. Lighter, people are running. And then the darker person who most likely has a broken leg or is bleeding or has cardiac arrest is tough. They can handle it because of societal, like, oh, we have to take care of the lighter person because like they're frail and you're going to we have to sort them out first. And you are dying. It's killing people, guys. It's not just like dreams and you not get the job. Lives are being lost. And we are not quantifying it, and we are not going after, we're not questioning it. So it's just happening, and people like are losing people. Look at the COVID situation in the US, and like, well, that is like mostly racism, but it's the same kind of, thoughts and the consciousness that transcends to what we're doing here. I have this very, very like radical question. Do you think that JJ Rawlings would have been given all these graces after all the things that his regiment gave if he was dark, like Jay Kufuor? Like if
You
he was
really,
dark,
really want to answer that question?
I want to say something quickly. So JJ Kwamwa did just mentioned in the comment section about desire is not in a vacuum, and I really want to sort of emphasize that like 100 million times, because I mean for us, maybe I would say for some of us who are cultural theorists or whatever, I mean desire for us, it isn't necessarily apolitical. We can say our desire is somewhere else and we are somewhere else. I think it's all entangled. It's all sort of together with the structures that we have to navigate in our everyday. And of course, even with at the hospital, with blackness seen as being more tough and being more resilient, and whiteness seen as seen as more frail, but also in the way in how and who we pursue for relationship. There's so many people who have written about these kinds of topics and said, "Oh, it's not in a vacuum." Who we desire a lot. Like I think somebody mentioned this earlier about, when we're young, you were imagining yourself having all this white. So it was a white wife with the mixed kids, and then at the so, exactly. So even our desires are sort of structured through these systems, and I think that definitely is a big thing that we also can talk about, eventually.
Go ahead.
All right. So you're saying that your choice is your choice, so you should be allowed to make whatever choices you want to make, but there's not been enough. We've not we've not dived deep enough into why there's the general consensus that what is white is better. So people have done, they've made surveys, they've done some research, and you go to different communities and they say, "Oh, I bleach because it's more beautiful." Why? We don't. We've not really thought about why it is considered more. Definitely, all shades are beautiful if you like fair skin. Good for you, but I do feel like we're not asking enough questions about what this colonial legacy is, which has led us to this point where everything fairer is better. So I think as long as we can have these conversations with people and um, bring some awareness to some of the effects that have trickled down over the generations, I think that'll help things improve overall. But just to say this is my type and that's all. I mean, why is it your type? Why do you think it's more beautiful? You need to be really honest with yourself and then
Exactly.
Yeah.
let us know why you think those things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I was going to say that based on what she's saying, then does it like we need to ask ourselves what I think is my choice? Is it really my choice?
Exactly.
Exactly,
Is what
exactly,
I'm thinking my choice
100%.
really the choice I would have made if I had I was given the opportunity, or because I don't have the choice to make that choice? That is
Someone
why
told me
I'm
that
taking
that
this
is a good
area.
choice for me. That's why it's the choice. But
Yeah.
if we're aware of some of these biases we have, some of this, the upbringing, the orientation we've had, the socialization that we have,
Right.
that'll help us, make better choices and make society a bit more inclusive, I believe. We're not
Right.
asking enough questions. We're just accepting the status quo because some people
Exactly.
are benefiting and they're comfortable with things. And
Mhm.
who gives a rat's behind about the effects of the rest of the
Yeah.
the rest of society?
So there's a question right in the comments that I think is interesting, but I don't know that we have it because it's also a kind of a related but different, and it will invoke a lot of other things, which is about urbanism, right? In a society, which is related to colorism, but I don't know that we have the time to talk about that now. But what I want us to do is to talk about, because our 1 hour is up, but I want us to talk about what can we do, right? What can we do as individuals in our day-to-day lives? And this is going back to the question that I said I had in mind, but also that two of our commenters had pointed to earlier. What can we do then as individuals, as a society, as people who are going about our everyday lives, in our families, in our communities? How do we help change the narrative about colorism?
So let me, if I can go first quickly here. Um, so I think that we need to shift the way we talk about it a little bit, in the sense that people don't necessarily want to be like Bernie. There is this researcher who's looked into this, and also I have done some studies with colorism, and I think studying the discourse, how people talk about colorism, is very interesting, because I realized that they don't necessarily want to be white, or the way they explain it is more along the lines of they don't want to be light or they don't want to be white. They just want to be less dark. So I think that distinction is very, very important, because they are just, the way they're framing it is, we just want to be less dark. I saw this dark spots here, and I saw this dark spots here, and I want to just clear it. So I think that's a very interesting. That's a very interesting, and also changing dynamics around the conversation. It's almost the same thing, but I think if we hit it around, why do you necessarily want to be less dark? Um, Maybe it might change the conversation, because people are shamed a little bit when the assumption is, "Upasa you want to burn," and also, "Upasa you want to," you want to be lighter, or you want to be like a white person. And I think people have a lot of people have come to understand that that is unacceptable. Like, it's, this self harming, self shame process. So I think if we can begin the conversation from, why do you want to be less dark, maybe it might lead us to a different answer. I don't know, but that's what, at least based on my little research that I have done, I realized that the discourse is shifting because bleaching is such a bad thing right now. So now it's more along the lines of toning. I just want to tone a little bit, which is mostly around. I just want to tone here a little.
When an educated person is bleaching, we call it toning and lightning. And then when a poor person is bleaching, we say the person is bleaching.
Bleaching.
Well, tuning is definitely not any of those things, like
Yep.
bleaching or bleaching. They're just trying to put in a more acceptable word so that they can get away with it. I think we've all kind of alluded to this a little bit, that it boils down to asking yourself why you hold the beliefs that you do, and once you're more honest with yourself, then it opens up the door to have a broader conversation about why you're making the choices you have, and why some things you need to unlearn and then learn a different way,
Yeah.
so that society improves. Really, it's the more we have these conversations, because really it stops at white is better, period, and we're done. You close shop and we've accepted it. So I think the more we speak about the effects of colorism on our psyche as a whole, and why it is we've held some of the beliefs we have, it'll help. I believe that's a good way to kind of get the ball rolling on shifting the way colorism is affecting us today. That's what I
I
believe.
think
So
I
I
started
want to jump in here quick. I'll come
with
back to you, Amanda. I'll come back to you. I just want to read this comment that we have. I think it's a very well thought out comment, which is also directly related to the question from Dorothy in the comments. What I do as an editor
okay.
is to flag illustrations that look like white children in the Ghanaian textbook, or in Ghanaian textbooks I edit. So when a designer places blonde hair on a white boy in a Ghanaian textbook, I flag it and ask the hair be replaced with kinky black hair and the skin tone changed. For her, that's, as an editor, she's in a position, right, that she can, in her own small way. And I think it's very important. I really cannot love this comment enough. But I wasn't trying to cut you, Amanda. If you want to.
Actually, what I was going to say is similar to what she has said. I think we've acknowledged the fact that colorism is a social construct. It's something we've learned through socialization. So the best thing we have or we can do is to unlearn everything that we have learned about colorism. What is nice and what color is nice, what color is not nice. And this is something that cuts across all spheres. So from the home, which child are you giving more attention to because they have color? And like, oh, I had all those children, but when I gave birth to this one, she was fair. And so I was much more happier. What kind of messages are you sending across from home? In the classrooms, what kind of books are we giving to people to read? Who do we define as being beautiful on the screens? Who are we presenting on in movies, in advertisements and all that? Who are we portraying as the prettiest, and what's important in our workplaces? Why are we placing more merits on fair girls being at the front desk and dark skinned people being at the background? And even when they are much more important and can engage people better, why are we thinking that if we are going for competitions, we have to go with girls that are light skinned from our schools and our various, even sports girls? People will prefer sometimes to go with girls that are, when they're going for competitions outside of the school, and then they will go with this one. So there's a need for us to question what we have learned and what it means to us and how we're going to. And I think from what we also need to do is to place much more emphasis on the skin, a clean skin than a colored skin. If you have a beautiful skin, it doesn't need to be fair. So if you're a lady and you want to look attractive, people are not going to look, and it does not necessarily have to be the fact that you are fair, but how clean your skin is and all that. But unfortunately, a lot of the skin blemishing products are, it lightens you at the end. So that's where the challenge also is. So then there's a need for those in the industry as well, because I don't see why, if I had a company like, let's say, Mary Kay or something, and then I would rather promote skin lightening when I'm a black person. And these are, so I think at the individual levels, we take the, when you are presented with opportunity, like Dorothy mentioned, she's in her small way making a change. But then at the institutional level, which is much more important, because if I come to school and I know that I'm not supposed, I've been taught from school that I don't have to choose colors and that everybody merits what kind of opportunity that comes with it. Because this is more like issues of discussing issues of gender, male, female. who is smarter, which is much more important. And then we are making every effort to reverse this narrative. So I think it's about time we added issues of colorism to it as well. Um,
Yeah.
when we are presenting images, we have to make sure that these images are things that are um, representative and inclusive. So in our movies, how many black people are going to feature? How many black people are going to be leading playing leading roles and on all that?
Mm.
One thing that I also think that we can do is mostly okay. So if it's starting from home, most of it is the mothers that are spending a lot of time with these children, and we learn a lot of these things from home before we even step up. Somebody is pregnant is already thinking of what kind of things to take so that my child will come out lighter. Why don't you, like Vesta's grandmother did, let your child understand the fact that it doesn't matter the color of your skin. So if we, and then most of the things that we grow up, a lot of the values we grow up with and hold on to are the ones we pick from home. So if our parents build this confidence in us right from home, we are more likely to question these things and fight back when we go into the public spaces and people are discriminating against us based on our color.
Um, my contribution, we should have the courage to call it out when you see it. Be the voice that you wish somebody was for you. So if you see it, I'm not saying, well, be as diplomatic as you can in like, oh nasa akwala, oh so you feel like reinforce the values that you want us to see in the world. And if it's happening in at work or something, call it out. And also in your daily things, if you're in a place of influence, make sure that you're treating the people that are darker skin the same way you're treating the people that are lighter skin. And in my case, I will skew towards the people that are darker skinned more, because then they're already in a deficit in that kind of aspect of their lives, because obviously you're already not seen to be desirable. So at every opportunity I can get, I'm going to obviously hype you. I'm going to make you feel great about yourself. And then as somebody who creates content, I would go out of my way to cast darker skin people and things like that, because as I said, the bar is already being skewed against you. So in any way that I can put you in a positive light, I am going to do it. So whenever we see, we should call it out. We should say, for it's uncomfortable, but think about how that's going to affect the person for life. Think about how that's going to affect how the person's legacy is grown. If the person had a project that they were supposed to get and it was going to cost maybe 100,000 CDs, and you're going to let it go because they are darker skin and that's just society, you literally like change the trajectory of somebody's life just by keeping quiet. So speak truth to power, call it out when you see it. It's uncomfortable, but you will not die.
Yeah.
It's just uncomfortable. And most of these conversations are uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable thinking when I come on here, it would seem like you're bashing light skinned people, but we're able to have a very constructive conversation about it without bashing people. Call it out. It's just uncomfortable. And it will go away when you step away, and you would have helped somebody, and you'd have helped skew this particular like, weight towards a bit of equality in the particular space. So just open your mouth and call it out. Take a few seconds, compliment the person, say what you have to say, and just move on. If it's wrong, call it out. And if you're lighter skin and you realize these are your privileges, you have to call it out as well. Don't sit and be like, oh, it's not my fault that they're treating me like this, so I can't do anything about it. You can do something about it. You can call it out and see it for what it is. And instead of like turning a blind eye and go, oh, that's how it is, and I'm just going to enjoy myself. No, call it out as well. Be an ally. You wouldn't be happy if that was happening to you. So call it out as well. Yeah, that's my piece.
Thank you.
Eventually, the Nivea billboard, which was advertising for fairer skin, it took backlash from the community to have it taken down. I think it was up for like 3 days. People were outraged. They called it out, and it was taken down immediately. So definitely, if you see anything of that sort that's encouraging colorism, by all means, say something about it, and it will help turn things around. Like these dolls, it's good to report things like that as well, so that people don't believe that black is less valuable and white
Yeah,
is on a pedestal.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Let me read a few of the comments we have before we wrap up here. So just particularly in relation to this final question, Kojo Mensah says, we need to be conscious about the reality of colorism and educate one another. We need to continue these conversations, and we need to teach the younger generation to appreciate that we are complete, whichever complexion we are. No one is more superior to the other. Aku says, I think approaching the issue with open-ended questions will lead individuals to stop and think about what they are saying. Damaski Apia says, we all have biases irrespective of how we look at things. It is the fact that these issues originated from the historical perspective, which has now been shrined within our education, culture, society, and our environment as a whole. The underlying issue boils down to individual interests. What actually shapes that interest cannot be generalized. All right, and then let me see here. We have some reaffirming questions based on what we were talking about in the moment. Any final things before we wrap up this conversation? Yes, Vesta.
Oh no, my
Oh,
hand was.
okay. Any final thoughts?
I do want to second what Vesta talked about. Sometimes I feel like for men, it might be difficult for us to jump in, especially when other men are talking about, oh, this girl is pretty because she's lighter skin. Oh, so, she's light. And I think that the pressure on men can be a little higher in some sense. So my final maybe thoughts will be that men should have the courage, just like Vesta said. The impact tends to be long lasting. So the very short uncomfortable moment of you calling out, another man or breaking the man code can also have a long lasting impact as well. So yeah, I just really want to second that. Thanks, Vesta.
I think that for me, I think that a lot of the things that we have seen or have come up with solutions and have seen change is because we studied them, we researched, came up with findings, and then we shared those things, and so people realize the impact of the things that were happening. I don't really think that people are questioning the things enough, are researching enough. So if we can pattern, it can be blogs, it can be articles, peer-reviewed articles and all that, just to let people know the consequences. I'm sure there are a number of people that are not even aware of some of the impacts issues of colorism have on other people. So there's a need for us to study more about it, come up with more information about the impact and the consequences. So people will say, oh, if somebody says that you are dark and so they don't like you, it ends there, you can move on. No, it's not everybody that's mentally strong enough to be able to. So you can come up with some of the mental consequences that these have. And so when some of these things come out and people have evidence to be able to back it, and then there will be some solution. Maybe if we can come up with also legal structures that will help fight. So if you discriminate against me, especially in terms of employment and all that, based on color, I should be able to sue you.
That's
and
it.
some of this will come with consequences, and institutions will be held accountable.
Yeah.
Just to I wasn't going to say anything else, but just because what Amanda said reminded me of my own experience, not personal, but I teach courses. So where I teach in the university, I teach in college level, especially I teach this course almost every year. It's my primary area, which is organizational communication. And in that course, usually my students would have to do a big research paper where they are finding a topic and they're going in there. And what I've noticed in the last 5 or so years is that every single time there's at least one, sometimes 2 or 3 dark-skinned women in my class whose topic has something to do with body image related to their color, their skin tone. And I keep wondering why, right? And so it just goes back to that comment Amanda was saying, right? About this is not just a conversation that goes away. This is not just a symbolic thing. It actually has material consequences, right? People actually feel it in their daily lives, and which is why it's important, right? So I'm just adding my voice to that call to keep talking about these things in all the little small spaces that we have, and maybe eventually this will go away somehow. I mean, let's see. But thank you so much, and I do really appreciate all the comments as well. Obviously, we couldn't get the chance to read all of the comments. I hope we were able to respond to all of the questions. I think we did, right? But we were not able to read all the comments. But thank you. At least we saw them in the on the screen here, and we are excited that you were able to join us in this conversation. Thanks to you once again for being with us. Thanks to our guests, Ikea and Vesta, and then to our regular Gottfried and Amanda. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you next time when we bring you another conversation, and we'll keep you updated on our Facebook page. So please, if you're not following us on Facebook or other Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so on, please reach out, and we're happy to connect, and we'll keep updating with what's coming up, and particularly as we keep these conversations going, we'll update our social media pages as well with stuff that keeps the conversation going. So thank you once again, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right then. Thanks so much.
Bye. Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.